Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm bringing you an exclusive Hercule Poirot mystery set in the exotic and dangerous world of 1930s Cairo, Shadows in the Souk. When the legendary Belgian detective receives an urgent telegram from an old friend, he finds himself drawn into a web of betrayal, murder, and long-buried secrets. A locked room, a apparent suicide, and a conspiracy that reaches back to the aftermath of the Great War. But nothing is as it seems in the labyrinth of Khan el-Khalili, where shadows remember what men desperately wish to forget. If you love classic detective mysteries with unexpected twists, atmospheric settings, and brilliant deductions, you're going to love this 8-chapter thriller. Before we begin, I hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss a single clue as Poirot unravels one of his most challenging cases yet. Now, here's a question for you. If you discovered a terrible secret that could destroy someone's life, would you expose the truth or let the past remain buried? Drop your answer in the comments below. Now, let's step into the world of Hercule Poirot and discover what mysteries await in the shadows of the Souk. Chapter 1. The Telegram from Cairo. The autumn rain fell steadily upon London, drumming against the windows of Hercule Poirot's modest flat in Whitehaven Mansions. The little Belgian detective sat before his fireplace, his egg-shaped head tilted in contemplation as he examined a telegram that had arrived that very morning. "Mon ami," he murmured to himself, stroking his magnificent moustache, "this is most irregular." The telegram had come from an old acquaintance, Sir Edmund Blackwood, a retired diplomat who had settled in Cairo some years prior. The message was brief but urgent. "Require your assistance immediately. Stop matter of utmost delicacy. Stop please, come at once. Stop Blackwood." Poirot did not care for vague summonses. He preferred precision, order, and above all, the proper arrangement of facts. Yet there was something in the terseness of Sir Edmund's message that troubled him. They had worked together once before, in Constantinople, on a matter involving stolen diplomatic papers. Sir Edmund was not a man given to dramatics. 3 days later, Poirot found himself aboard a steamer bound for Alexandria, and from thence by rail to Cairo. And the journey gave him ample time to consider what might await him in that ancient city. The year was 1934, and Egypt, though nominally independent, still bore the heavy influence of British administration. It was a place of contrasts. Modern hotels and ancient monuments, European fashion and traditional dress, all existing side by side in uneasy harmony. Upon his arrival at Cairo's main railway station, Poirot was met not by Sir Edmund himself, but by a young Egyptian man in Western dress who introduced himself as Rashid Gamal, Sir Edmund's secretary. "Monsieur Poirot?" the young man asked, his English impeccable though accented. "Sir Edmund sends his apologies. He is indisposed this afternoon, but he has asked me to escort you to the hotel and to brief you on certain developments." Indisposed? Poirot's grey cells began to stir. He is ill?" "Not precisely, monsieur." Rashid hesitated, glancing around the crowded platform. "Perhaps we might discuss this in a more private setting." They took a taxi through the teeming streets of Cairo. Poirot observed everything with his characteristic attention to detail: the vendors selling dates and spices, the women in black abayas, the British soldiers in their khaki uniforms, the donkey carts competing with motor cars for space on the narrow roads. The taxi deposited them at Shepheard's Hotel, that grand establishment where European society gathered to gossip over tea and cocktails. Once Poirot was settled in his room, Rashid began his account. "Sir Edmund has been receiving threats, monsieur. Anonymous letters, delivered to his home over the past fortnight. They reference an incident from his past, something that occurred during his diplomatic service in 1919. And what was this incident? I do not know the details. Sir Edmund has been most secretive about it. But 3 days ago, something happened that terrified him." "Continue." "He was visiting Khan el-Khalili, the old souk, you understand? A man approached him there, in the shadows between the stalls. Sir Edmund did not see his face clearly, but the man whispered something to him, words that made Sir Edmund turn pale as death. Since then, he has barely left his house." Poirot's eyes narrowed. And what did this mysterious man say? Sir Edmund will not tell me. He says only that you, Monsieur Poirot, are the one man who might help him. He asks that you come to his residence tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, and he will explain everything then. But Sir Edmund Blackwood would never keep that appointment. That very evening, while Poirot dined on roasted pigeon in the hotel restaurant, a maid at Sir Edmund's villa on the edge of the city would discover her employer in his study, slumped over his desk, a single bullet wound in his temple, and an antique pistol in his hand. It would appear, to all who saw it, to be suicide. But Hercule Poirot did not believe in convenient coincidences. Chapter 2. Death in the Villa. The news reached Poirot as he took his morning coffee on the hotel terrace. Rashid Gamal appeared, his face ashen, his hands trembling as he delivered the terrible information. Monsieur Poirot, Sir Edmund, he is dead. Poirot set down his cup with deliberate care. Tell me everything, mon ami. Omit nothing, however insignificant it may seem. Rashid collapsed into the chair opposite. The maid, Fatima, found him at 6:30 this morning when she arrived to prepare his breakfast. He was in his study, at his desk. The police say it was suicide, a self-inflicted gunshot wound. But monsieur, I cannot believe it. Sir Edmund was frightened, yes, but he was not a man who would take his own life. The police have already made their determination. Poirot's eyebrows rose. How efficient they are. Inspector Hassan arrived within the hour. He is a capable man, but he sees what appears obvious. The door was locked from the inside. The windows were secure. The pistol was in Sir Edmund's own hand, an antique piece from his collection. And yet you do not believe it was suicide. No, monsieur, I do not. Within an hour, Le Poirot stood before the villa that had been Sir Edmund Blackwood's final residence. It was a handsome building in the European style, painted white with green shutters, surrounded by a garden of palms and bougainvillea. A police constable stood guard at the entrance. Inspector Hassan, a middle-aged Egyptian with intelligent eyes and a neatly trimmed moustache, greeted Poirot with a mixture of curiosity and professional courtesy. Monsieur Poirot, your reputation precedes you. Mr. Gamal informed me you were a friend of the deceased. I am sorry for your loss, but I must tell you, this is a straightforward case. All evidence points to suicide. Perhaps, Poirot murmured, but you will permit me to examine the scene? I have traveled very far, and Sir Edmund summoned me for a purpose. Hassan hesitated, then nodded. Very well, but please, or do not disturb anything. The study was on the ground floor, overlooking the garden. It was a gentleman's room. Leather chairs, shelves of books, tribal masks and artifacts from Sir Edmund's years of service throughout the empire. And there, at the mahogany desk, the chalk outline where the body had been found. Poirot moved about the room with the delicate precision of a cat, his eyes missing nothing. He examined the locked door, the position of the desk, the window latches. He studied the bloodstain on the leather blotter, the placement of papers, the drawer that stood slightly open. The pistol, he said. It was in his right hand? Yes, Hassan confirmed. And Sir Edmund? He was right-handed? I believe so. Poirot picked up a fountain pen from the desk holder, noting the angle at which it had been placed. He examined the inkwell, on the leather-bound appointment diary lying open to yesterday's date. Then his gaze fell upon something else, a small brass ashtray containing the remnants of burned paper. Inspector, these ashes, they have been examined? They are simply ashes, Monsieur Poirot. Perhaps Sir Edmund burned a letter before he took this unfortunate action. Précisément, a letter, or perhaps something else. Poirot bent closer, inhaling slightly. There is a scent. Do you detect it? Not tobacco. Something more acrid. Hassan shrugged. I smell nothing unusual. Poirot straightened, his eyes gleaming. Tell me, Inspector, was there a suicide note? No, but not all suicides leave notes. True. And yet Sir Edmund was a diplomat, a man who dealt in words, in careful communication. If he intended to end his life, would he not explain why? Would he not leave some final message? Perhaps he was too distraught. Or perhaps, Poirot said softly, he did not take his own life at all. He turned to Rashid, who had been standing silently by the door. "The anonymous letters Sir Edmund received, where are they now?" "He kept them in his desk drawer, monsieur, the bottom right drawer." Poirot opened the drawer in question. It was empty save for some blank stationery and a box of cartridges for the pistol, cartridges that matched the fatal bullet. "The letters are gone," Rashid whispered. "But they were here. I saw them myself only 2 days ago. 3 letters written in Arabic script." "Interesting," Poirot murmured. "Most interesting indeed." Inspector Hassan frowned. "If there were letters, where are they now? Did Sir Edmund destroy them?" "That, mon ami, is one of several questions to which we must find answers." Poirot turned slowly, surveying the room once more. "Who discovered the body?" "The maid, Fatima Abbas. She has worked for Sir Edmund for 2 years." "I wish to speak with her, and with anyone else who was in this house last night." "There was only Fatima and the cook, an elderly woman named Safia. Both live in the servants' quarters at the rear of the house. Neither heard anything unusual." "A gunshot? And they heard nothing?" Hassan shifted uncomfortably. "The servants' quarters are some distance from this room, and both women are elderly. They sleep soundly." Poirot said nothing, but his expression spoke volumes. As the morning sun climbed higher, casting long shadows through the study window, Hercule Poirot stood in silent contemplation. His little grey cells were assembling the pieces of a puzzle that was only just beginning to reveal itself. Sir Edmund Blackwood had not committed suicide. Of this, Poirot was certain. But who had murdered him, and why? The answer, he suspected, lay somewhere in the shadows of the Souk, and in a secret from 1919 that someone was desperate to keep buried. Chapter 3. The Servant's Tale. The servants' quarters lay at the rear of the villa, accessed through a small courtyard fragrant with jasmine. Poirot, accompanied by Inspector Hassan and Rashid, found the 2 women huddled together in the small kitchen, their faces drawn with shock and grief. Fatima Abbas, the maid, was perhaps 60 years of age, her head covered by a simple black scarf. Her hands trembled as she poured tea into small glasses. The cook, Safia, was older still, on her weathered face a map of wrinkles, her eyes rheumy but sharp. "Mademoiselle Fatima," Poirot began gently, settling himself on a wooden stool, "I understand this has been a terrible shock for you, but I must ask you some questions. You discovered Sir Edmund this morning?" "Yes, Effendi." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "At 6:30, as always. I went to open the shutters in the study and prepare the room for his morning work. When I saw him—" She broke off, covering her face with her hands. "The door? It was locked when you arrived?" "Yes, Effendi. I had to use my key." "And you have a key to all the rooms in the house?" "Yes, Effendi. Sir Edmund trusted me." Poirot stroked his moustache thoughtfully. "Tell me, what was Sir Edmund's mood yesterday? Did he seem distressed? Afraid? Perhaps?" Fatima exchanged a glance with Safia before answering. "He was troubled, Effendi. For many days now, he had been troubled. He did not eat properly. He spent long hours in his study with the door locked." "Did he receive any visitors yesterday?" "No, Effendi. He refused all callers. He told me he was not at home to anyone." "And in the evening? What time did you last see him?" "At 7 o'clock, when I brought his dinner to the study. He barely touched it. He sent me away, said he wished to be alone. Rashid Effendi had already left for the day." Poirot turned to the cook. "And you, Madame Safia? Did you observe anything unusual?" The old woman's eyes narrowed shrewdly. "I know what they say, that Sir Edmund took his own life, but I do not believe it, Effendi. He was afraid, yes, but he was also angry. And angry men do not kill themselves. They fight." "Ah," Poirot leaned forward with interest. "You believe he was afraid and angry? Why do you say this?" 3 nights ago, I heard him in the study, late at night. I had risen to fetch water. I heard him speaking, shouting almost, though there was no one else there." "He was on the telephone, perhaps?" No, Effendi, I passed by the door. I heard him say, "You cannot threaten me, I will not be silenced." Then there was a pause, and he said, "Very well. If that is how it must be, I will expose everything. The truth will come out at last." Inspector Hassan stirred. "You did not mention this to the police, Sophia." The old woman shrugged. The young constable, he did not ask. He saw the locked room, the pistol, and he decided. But I have worked in many houses for many years, Effendi, so I know the difference between a man who gives up and a man who fights back. Poirot rose to his feet, his face thoughtful. "One more question. Last night, did either of you hear anything? A gunshot, footsteps, anything at all?" Both women shook their heads. "We sleep at the back of the house, Effendi," Fatima said, "and the study is at the front, with thick walls. We heard nothing until the morning." As they left the servants' quarters, Rashid spoke in a low voice. "Monsieur Poirot, there is something I must tell you. Yesterday afternoon, before I left for the day, Sir Edmund gave me an envelope. He said, 'If anything should happen to me, Rashid, I want you to give this to Hercule Poirot, to no one else. Do you understand?' Poirot stopped walking. "And where is this envelope now?" Rashid reached into his jacket and withdrew a cream-colored envelope sealed with red wax bearing Sir Edmund's signet ring. "I have kept it safe, monsieur. I have not opened it." Poirot took the envelope with reverent care, examining the seal. "Let us return to my hotel. I wish to read this in private." An hour later, in his suite at Shepherd's Hotel, Poirot broke the seal and extracted a single sheet of paper. The handwriting was firm and clear, the hand of a man who knew his own mind. "My dear Poirot, if you are reading this, then I am most likely dead, and my death will almost certainly have been made to appear as suicide. Do not believe it. I am being hunted by someone who knows what happened in Damascus in the spring of 1919, an incident I have kept hidden for 15 years. In 1919, I was stationed in Damascus during the Paris Peace Conference negotiations. A young Arab nationalist named Khalid al-Rashid came to me with evidence of a conspiracy, a plot by certain British and French officials to betray promises made to the Arab leaders during the war. The evidence was explosive: documents, letters, proof of secret agreements that contradicted everything we had publicly pledged. I was young and ambitious. I was also a coward. Instead of exposing the conspiracy, I buried it. I took the documents from Khalid and promised to deliver them to the proper authorities. Instead, I destroyed them. 3 days later, Khalid was found dead in an alley in the old city. Officially, it was declared a robbery gone wrong. But I have always known the truth. He was murdered because of what he knew. Now, someone else knows what I did. Someone who has those same documents, or copies of them. They have been threatening to expose me unless I pay them a substantial sum, but it is not the money they truly want. They want revenge. If I am dead, Poirot, find the truth. Find who killed me, and find the documents. They must be brought to light at last. It is the only way I can atone for my cowardice. The man in the souk who threatened me, I did not see his face, but he whispered one name: Khalid. And then he said, "Shadows remember what men forget." I remain, in hope of justice, Edmund Blackwood. Poirot read the letter twice, then carefully folded it and placed it in his pocket. He walked to the window and gazed out over the rooftops of Cairo, toward the distant minarets rising against the afternoon sky. "So," he murmured to himself, "we have a secret from 1919. So a dead Arab nationalist, and a murder disguised as suicide, and somewhere in this ancient city, a killer who believes he is executing justice." He turned to Rashid, who had been waiting silently. "Tell me, mon ami, do you know anything of this Khalid al-Rashid? Of what happened in Damascus in 1919? Rashid's face had gone pale. "Khalid al-Rashid," he whispered. "Monsieur, that was my grandfather's name." Chapter 4. Secrets of the Past. The revelation hung in the air like smoke from a hookah pipe. Poirot's eyes fixed upon the young man with an intensity that seemed to peer into his very soul. "Your grandfather," Poirot said softly, "and yet you work for the man who may have been responsible for his death. This is most curious, mon ami. Rashid sank into a chair, his composure crumbling. I did not know. Not until recently. My grandfather died when my father was only a boy. We were told it was a robbery, a senseless crime. But 6 months ago, my father became ill. On his deathbed, he told me the truth, or what he believed to be the truth. He said my grandfather had been murdered because he tried to expose a conspiracy, a betrayal of the Arab cause. And did your father name Sir Edmund? No, monsieur. He did not know who was responsible. He knew only that my grandfather had approached a British diplomat, a man he trusted, and that shortly afterward, he was killed. The documents my grandfather possessed, proof of secret treaties, of broken promises, they vanished. My father spent his life trying to discover the truth, but he found nothing. Poirot began to pace, his hands clasped behind his back. And so you sought employment with Sir Edmund? Why? What, did you suspect him? I suspected nothing at first, Rashid said miserably. I needed work, and Sir Edmund required a secretary who spoke both English and Arabic fluently. It was only after I began working for him that I noticed certain things. His collection of documents from the Paris Peace Conference period, his unease whenever Damascus was mentioned, the way he would sometimes stare at an old photograph of himself in Syria with such guilt in his eyes. Did you confront him? Never. I had no proof. And truthfully, monsieur, I came to admire Sir Edmund. He was kind to me, generous. He treated me with respect. I could not reconcile the man I knew with the villain of my father's story. I told myself perhaps my father had been mistaken. But then the threatening letters began to arrive. Yes, 3 letters over 2 weeks. Sir Edmund would not show them to me, but I could see they terrified him. And then, after his visit to Khan el-Khalili, he was a changed man, haunted, desperate. He asked me to send the telegram to you. He said you were the only one who could help him. Poirot withdrew Sir Edmund's letter from his pocket. Read this. Rashid's hands trembled as he read his former employer's confession. When he finished, tears streamed down his face. So it is true. He betrayed my grandfather. He condemned him to death. Perhaps, or perhaps the matter is more complicated than it appears. Poirot retrieved the letter and studied it once more. Sir Edmund calls himself a coward, but even cowards can change. He summoned me here to expose the truth, knowing it would destroy his reputation. That suggests a man seeking redemption, not a man fleeing from justice. But who sent the threatening letters? Who killed him? These, mon ami, are the questions we must answer. Let us consider the facts. Someone knows about the events of 1919. Someone who has access to documents or information that Sir Edmund believed destroyed. This person threatened him, demanding money, but truly seeking revenge. Then, 3 days ago, someone approached Sir Edmund in the Souk and whispered your grandfather's name. Rashid wiped his eyes. Could it be someone from my family? Someone who discovered the truth? It is possible. Tell me, do you have other family in Cairo? Uncles, cousins? My father was an only child, but my grandfather had a brother, my great-uncle Farouk. He is very old now, perhaps 80 years. He lives in the old Islamic quarter, near the Al-Azhar Mosque. We must speak with him immediately. But, monsieur, he is frail, his mind wanders. Nevertheless, we must try. The past holds the key to this mystery, and he is a link to that past. An hour later, Poirot and Rashid navigated the narrow, winding streets of medieval Cairo. The modern city fell away, replaced by ancient stone buildings, latticed windows, and the calls of vendors selling everything from spices to copper pots. They passed through archways older than any living memory, beneath clotheslines strung between buildings that leaned toward each other like old friends sharing secrets. Farouk al-Rashid lived on the 3rd floor of a crumbling apartment building near a small mosque. The stairs were steep and worn, the walls water-stained, or as Rashid knocked softly on a wooden door decorated with faded Arabic calligraphy. A voice, thin and querulous, called out in Arabic. Rashid answered, and after a moment, the door opened. Farouk al-Rashid was a skeleton of a man, his white beard reaching to his chest, his eyes milky with cataracts. But when those eyes fell upon Rashid, They cleared momentarily with recognition. "Grandson of my brother," he said in Arabic, which Rashid quietly translated for Poirot. "You honor me with your visit. Enter, enter." The apartment was small but scrupulously clean, filled with the aroma of cardamom tea and old books. Farouk settled himself on cushions and gestured for his guests to do likewise. After the customary exchange of pleasantries, Poirot spoke, with Rashid translating. "Uncle Farouk, I must ask you about your brother Khalid, or about what happened in Damascus in 1919. The old man's face darkened. "Damascus. Yes. My brother went to Damascus full of hope. He believed the British would honor their promises, that we would have our independence, our Arab kingdom. Instead, he found lies and betrayal." "He obtained documents proving this betrayal?" "Yes, letters, treaties, secret agreements. He brought them to a British official he thought was honest, a man named Blackwood. Khalid trusted him to expose the conspiracy." Farouk's voice cracked with emotion. 3 days later, my brother was dead and the documents were gone. I tried to find justice, but I was nobody. A shopkeeper, powerless against the British Empire." "Did you ever see these documents yourself?" "No. Khalid kept them hidden, told me only that they existed. He feared for his safety, and, rightly so, and as it transpired." Poirot leaned forward. "Uncle Farouk, in recent weeks, have you spoken to anyone about your brother's death? Has anyone asked you questions about Damascus, about the documents?" The old man's brow furrowed in thought. "There was a man, yes, perhaps a month ago. A European, though he spoke excellent Arabic. He said he was a historian, researching the peace conference period. He asked about Khalid, about what my brother knew. I told him everything. Why should I not? Khalid's story should be remembered." "Can you describe this man?" "Tall, perhaps 50 years of age. He had grey hair and wore spectacles. He was very polite, very interested. He took many notes." "Did he give you his name?" "He called himself Dr. Rousseau, a French scholar." "But—" Farouk hesitated. "Yes?" "There was something about him, something that troubled me. The way he asked his questions. It was not the curiosity of a scholar. It was the intensity of a man seeking something specific, something personal." Poirot and Rashid exchanged glances. As they descended the dark stairway back to the street, Rashid spoke. "Dr. Rousseau, do you think this is our man, monsieur? Perhaps, or perhaps it is simply another thread in this tangled web." Poirot paused on the street, looking up at the minaret of the nearby mosque, silhouetted against the evening sky. "But one thing becomes clear, mon ami. We are not dealing with a simple case of blackmail and murder. There are forces at work here, old hatreds, old debts that have festered for 15 years. And somewhere in this city, a killer walks free, believing he has committed the perfect crime. What do we do now?" Poirot smiled. See a cold smile that held no humor. "Now, mon ami, we do what Sir Edmund should have done in 1919. We seek the truth, wherever it may lead. And we begin, I think, in the place where Sir Edmund was threatened, in the shadows of Khan el-Khalili, where secrets are bought and sold like spices in the Souk." Chapter 5. The Labyrinth of Khan el-Khalili. The sun had begun its descent toward the western desert when Poirot and Rashid entered the Khan el-Khalili, Cairo's ancient marketplace. The souk was a labyrinth of narrow alleyways, each lined with shops selling brass lamps, silk scarves, jewelry that glittered like the treasures of pharaohs, and spices that filled the air with their heady perfume. "Sir Edmund came here often," Rashid explained as they navigated the crowded passages. "He collected antiquities, small pieces, scarabs, amulets, and fragments of pottery. He had his favorite dealers, men he had known for years." "And it was here, 3 days ago, that someone approached him with threats?" "Yes, monsieur. He told me only that a man whispered to him in the shadows, spoke my grandfather's name, and said, 'Shadows remember what men forget.' After that, Sir Edmund would not return here. He was terrified." Poirot observed everything with his characteristic attention to detail, the faces in the crowd, the merchants calling out their wares, the play of light and shadow as the sun filtered through the canvas awnings overhead. Here, in this ancient place, the past and present seemed to blur together. We must speak with the dealers Sir Edmund frequented. Someone may have observed this encounter. Rashid led him deeper into the souk, and to a small shop tucked into a corner where few tourists ventured. The shop was cluttered with genuine antiquities mixed with clever forgeries, scarabs of faience, bronze statuettes of gods, fragments of limestone reliefs. Behind a counter sat an elderly merchant, his face creased with age, his eyes shrewd and watchful. "Rashid Effendi," the merchant said, rising with difficulty, "it is good to see you, though I know the circumstances are sad. I heard about Sir Edmund. May Allah grant him peace." "Thank you, Abu Hassan. This is Monsieur Hercule Poirot, a detective from Europe. He is investigating Sir Edmund's death." The merchant's eyes flickered with interest. "A detective? Then perhaps someone else shares my doubts. I did not believe it was suicide." Poirot stepped forward. "You knew Sir Edmund well?" "For 15 years, Effendi. Why, he was a good customer and, I believed, a friend. He had an eye for quality, a respect for history. He was not a man who would take his own life. 3 days ago he came to the souk. Can you tell me what happened?" Abu Hassan stroked his white beard thoughtfully. "He came in the late afternoon, as was his custom. He examined some new pieces I had acquired, a beautiful scarab from the 18th dynasty, a bronze Osiris. We talked, we drank tea. Then he left, saying he wished to visit 1 or 2 other dealers before the souk closed." "And did you observe anything unusual? Did anyone follow him?" "The souk was crowded, Effendi. Many people come and go, but—" He hesitated. "Please, Abu Hassan, any detail, however small, may be important." "As Sir Edmund left my shop, I happened to glance out into the alley. I saw a man watching him, standing in the shadows near the carpet seller's stall. There was something about the way he watched, something that made me uneasy. When Sir Edmund walked past, this man followed him." "Can you describe this man?" "He wore European clothes, a linen suit, a Panama hat, but he moved like an Egyptian, if you understand my meaning. The way he carried himself, the way he navigated the crowd, and he wore dark spectacles, even though the sun was low." "Did you see his face?" "No, Effendi, the hat and spectacles concealed it. But I noticed his hands. They were the hands of a man who worked with his mind, not his body. Soft hands, clean, with a gold ring on the right hand." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A gold ring. Can you describe it?" "It caught the light as he moved. It appeared to be a signet ring, on with some design engraved upon it, but I could not see clearly." "And you did not see what happened afterward, where they went?" "No, Effendi, I had other customers, but I remember feeling troubled. I almost called out to Sir Edmund to warn him, but I told myself I was being foolish." Poirot thanked the merchant, and they continued through the souk, visiting 2 other dealers Sir Edmund had frequented. Both confirmed that he had visited their shops that afternoon, but neither had observed the man in the Panama hat. As the call to Maghrib prayer echoed from the minarets, Poirot and Rashid found themselves in a particularly narrow alley, darker than the rest, where the shops sold less reputable wares, dubious antiquities, items of uncertain provenance, the kinds of goods that respectable dealers avoided. And it was here that Poirot noticed a small shop, barely more than an alcove, its entrance hung with faded curtains. A sign in Arabic and French announced, "Mahmoud Effendi, rare books and manuscripts." "Wait," Poirot said, stopping. "This shop, did Sir Edmund ever visit here?" I do not know, monsieur. He never mentioned it to me. It deals primarily in manuscripts, not the kind of antiquities Sir Edmund collected." Poirot approached the shop and parted the curtains. Inside, the space was tiny, the walls lined with shelves holding leather-bound volumes, rolled manuscripts, and stacks of yellowed papers. The air smelled of old paper, ink, and mildew. Behind a desk piled high with books sat a man of perhaps 50, his face thin and ascetic, his eyes magnified by thick spectacles. "Good evening, Effendi," he said in French. "How may I serve you?" "You are Mahmoud Effendi?" "I am." "I am Hercule Poirot, and I am investigating the death of Sir Edmund Blackwood. Did you know him?" The man's expression did not change, but Poirot detected the slightest hesitation, a flicker of something in those magnified eyes. I knew of him, of course. His death was reported in the newspapers. A tragic case. Did he ever visit your shop? No, Effendi. I deal in manuscripts and documents, not the sort of objects that interested Sir Edmund Blackwood. And yet, Poirot said softly, you seem to know a great deal about his interests. It is a small community, Effendi. Those of us who deal in antiquities and historical items, we know of each other. Poirot's gaze swept the shop, taking in every detail. You specialize in documents from the Ottoman period, I see, and also from the time of the Great War and its aftermath. I have some items from that period, yes. Documents relating to the Paris Peace Conference, perhaps, to the promises made to the Arab peoples, to the secret treaties that contradicted those promises. The silence that followed was profound. Mahmoud's face had gone pale, and his hands, resting on the desk, trembled slightly. I do not know what you are suggesting, Effendi. I am suggesting nothing. I am merely observing that you deal in precisely the kind of documents that might prove extremely valuable to certain parties, or extremely dangerous to others. I am a respectable dealer, Effendi. I handle only legitimate materials. Of course. Poirot smiled, but it was the smile of a cat that has cornered a mouse. Tell me, Mahmoud Effendi, have you had any European customers recently? A French scholar, perhaps, named Dr. Rousseau. The man's reaction was immediate and unmistakable. His eyes widened, and he half rose from his chair. I know no one by that name. You are quite certain? A tall man, grey hair, spectacles, excellent command of Arabic? I see many customers, Effendi. I cannot remember them all. But surely you would remember a scholar researching the peace conference period? A man seeking documents relating to the promises made to Khalid al-Rashid? At the mention of that name, Mahmoud stood abruptly. I must ask you to leave, Effendi. I have answered your questions. I can tell you nothing more. Cannot, or will not? Please, Effendi, leave now. As they emerged from the shop into the darkening alley, Rashid whispered urgently, Monsieur, he was lying, and he knows something. Indeed, he knows a great deal, I suspect, and he is frightened, very frightened indeed. Poirot glanced back at the shop, where Mahmoud had already closed the curtains. That, mon ami, was not the reaction of an innocent man. They had walked perhaps 50 paces when Poirot suddenly stopped, his head tilted, listening. What is it, monsieur? Footsteps. Behind us. We are being followed. Rashid turned to look, but Poirot caught his arm. No, do not turn. Continue walking naturally. Lead us toward a more crowded area. They quickened their pace, moving through the labyrinth of alleys as the souk began to close for the evening. The footsteps behind them matched their rhythm, drawing neither closer nor falling back. Suddenly, Poirot darted to the left, pulling Rashid into a narrow passage between two shops. They pressed themselves against the wall, hidden in shadow. A moment later, a figure hurried past, a man in a linen suit and Panama hat, his face obscured by dark spectacles despite the failing light. He paused at the intersection of alleys, looking left and right, then cursed softly in French and disappeared into the crowd. Did you see him, Rashid? Did you recognize him? No, monsieur, but that was the man Abu Hassan described, the man who followed Sir Edmund. Précisément. And now he follows us, which means, mon ami, that we are getting close to something, or someone, that our mysterious Dr. Rousseau wishes to keep hidden. As they made their way back through the darkening souk toward the modern city, Poirot's mind worked with the precision of clockwork, assembling the pieces of this intricate puzzle. A murdered Arab nationalist in 1919. Our missing documents. A British diplomat's guilt and fear. A mysterious French scholar. A dealer in manuscripts who lies, and a killer who can commit murder in a locked room and make it appear to be suicide. The threads of this case, they begin to weave themselves into a pattern, Poirot murmured. But the picture is not yet complete. We need one more piece, and I believe I know where to find it. Chapter 6. The French Connection. The following morning, Poirot sat in the elegant drawing room of Shepheard's hotel, sipping his café au lait with meticulous precision. Beside him sat Inspector Hassan, who had arrived at Poirot's summons with an expression of professional curiosity mixed with skepticism. "Monsieur Poirot, you asked me to investigate any recent arrivals from France, scholars, researchers, anyone fitting the description of this doctor. Rousseau. I have done so, and I must tell you, the results are perplexing." "Perplexing? In what way?" Hassan withdrew a notebook from his pocket. "There is no Dr. Rousseau registered at any hotel in Cairo. I have checked them all, the Continental, the Semiramis, the Savoy, even the smaller establishments. Furthermore, I contacted the French consulate. They have no record of any French scholar by that name currently in Egypt." "Ah," Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Which tells us what, mon ami?" "That either this Dr. Rousseau does not exist, or he is using a false name." "Precisely. And if he uses a false name, it is because he has something to hide. Now tell me, have there been any other Europeans who arrived in Cairo within the past month, and who might fit the general description?" Hassan consulted his notes. "Several, of course. Now Cairo is a popular destination. But there is one arrival that may interest you. A Monsieur Philippe Mercier, a French journalist, arrived 3 weeks ago from Beirut. He is registered at the Hotel Continental under his own name. He is in his early 50s, tall, with grey hair. A journalist. This is most interesting. And what is the purpose of his visit? He claims to be writing a series of articles about Cairo for a French newspaper, Le Temps, I believe. He has the proper credentials, press identification, letters of introduction." "And yet?" Hassan smiled slightly. "And yet, when I made discreet inquiries, I discovered that he has shown very little interest in the usual tourist attractions or contemporary Cairo. Instead, he has been frequenting the archives at the British Residency, the library at the French Institute, and speaking with elderly Egyptians who were active in the nationalist movement during and after the Great War." "The behavior," Poirot murmured, "not of a journalist writing about modern Cairo, but of a man researching history. Specifically, perhaps, the history of 1919. "My thoughts exactly. We must speak with this Monsieur Mercier immediately." The Hotel Continental, though less grand than Shepheard's, maintained an air of faded elegance that suited the older generation of European residents. The concierge, a stout Egyptian in European dress, informed them that Monsieur Mercier was not in his room, but could often be found at this hour in the hotel's smoking room. They found him there, seated in a leather armchair beneath a slowly revolving ceiling fan, reading a French newspaper and smoking a Gauloise. He was indeed tall, one with iron grey hair swept back from a high forehead, and wore gold-rimmed spectacles. His linen suit was well tailored but worn, the suit of a man who lived on a modest income. His hands, Poirot noted with interest, bore the marks of scholarship, ink-stained fingers and a callus on the right middle finger from years of writing. "Monsieur Mercier?" Poirot approached with a small bow. The man looked up, his expression politely curious. "Yes? How may I help you?" "I am Hercule Poirot, and this is Inspector Hassan of the Cairo Police. We would like to ask you some questions regarding the death of Sir Edmund Blackwood." For a fraction of a second, so brief that a less observant man might have missed it, Mercier's composure faltered. Then he recovered, gesturing to the chairs opposite him. "Please sit. I read about Sir Edmund's death in the newspapers. A tragic case. But I fail to see how I can be of assistance. I did not know the gentleman." "Did you not?" Poirot settled himself comfortably. "And yet, monsieur, you have been in Cairo for 3 weeks, conducting research into precisely the period and events that consumed Sir Edmund's final days. You have been asking questions about the Paris Peace Conference, about promises made and broken, about an Arab nationalist named Khalid al-Rashid." Mercier's face betrayed nothing, but his fingers tightened almost imperceptibly on his newspaper. "I am a journalist, Monsieur Poirot. I research many topics. The Peace Conference and its aftermath represent an important chapter in modern history, particularly here in the Middle East, where its consequences are still felt." "Quite so. And have you, in the course of this research, ever used the name Dr. Rousseau?" This time the reaction was unmistakable. Mercier set down his newspaper with deliberate care. "I think, monsieur, that you should explain the purpose of these questions." "Certainly. Sir Edmund Blackwood was murdered 3 nights ago, though the authorities have been led to believe it was suicide. Before his death, he received threatening letters regarding his role in the death of Khalid al-Rashid in 1919. A man calling himself Dr. Rousseau visited Khalid's brother, asking questions about the same events. 3 days before his death, Sir Edmund was approached in Khan el-Khalili by a man in a Panama hat and dark spectacles, a man who whispered Khalid's name and then followed him through the souk." Mercier lit another cigarette, his movements controlled but tense. "A fascinating narrative, monsieur, but I still fail to see—" "Yesterday evening," Poirot continued smoothly, "this same man, or someone matching his description precisely, followed me through the souk after I visited a dealer in manuscripts named Mahmoud Effendi. Now, monsieur, I ask you again, have you ever used the name Dr. Rousseau?" The silence stretched between them. Finally, Mercier sighed deeply and crushed out his cigarette. "Very well. Yes, I used that name when speaking with Farouk al-Rashid. I did not wish to alarm the old man with my true purpose." "And what is your true purpose, monsieur?" Mercier rose and walked to the window, gazing out at the street below. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of long-suppressed emotion. "Khalid al-Rashid was my friend, Monsieur Poirot. We met in Damascus in 1918, or during the Arab Revolt. I was a young correspondent then, covering the war. Khalid and I shared many conversations about the future, about the promises that had been made to the Arab peoples, about justice and independence. He was a man of honor, of vision. When he was murdered in 1919, I knew in my heart, that it was not a simple robbery. It was assassination. And so you have spent 15 years seeking the truth?" "Not continually, number one. I had my career, my life. But I never forgot. And then, 6 months ago, I received a letter, an anonymous letter, suggesting that new evidence had come to light regarding Khalid's death. The letter mentioned Sir Edmund Blackwood by name. It claimed he had been responsible for destroying documents that would have exposed the betrayal of Arab independence." "An anonymous letter," Poirot repeated softly. "And did this letter suggest where you might find proof of these claims?" "It mentioned a dealer in Cairo, Mahmoud Effendi, who specialized in documents from that period. It hinted that he might possess copies of the very documents that Khalid had brought to Blackwood." "And so you came to Cairo?" "Yes, I came seeking the truth, justice for my friend's memory." Inspector Hassan leaned forward. "Monsieur Mercier, where were you 3 nights ago, between the hours of 8 o'clock and midnight?" Mercier turned from the window, his expression sorrowful. "I was here, Inspector, in this hotel. I dined alone in the restaurant at 8, retired to my room at 9:30, and spent the evening reading and making notes. I cannot prove this, as I saw no one after leaving the dining room." "Did you visit Sir Edmund Blackwood? Did you threaten him in Khan el-Khalili?" "I never spoke to Sir Edmund. I intended to. Yes, I planned to confront him with what I had discovered. But I wanted to be certain of my facts first. I was still gathering evidence." Poirot rose and began to pace, his hands clasped behind his back. "Tell me, Monsieur Mercier, this anonymous letter that brought you to Cairo, do you still have it?" "Yes, in my room. I can fetch it if you wish." "Please do so." When Mercier returned 5 minutes later, he handed Poirot a single sheet of paper, folded and somewhat worn from being carried. The paper was of good quality, the handwriting precise and educated, the French impeccable. Poirot read it carefully, then passed it to Hassan. "Most interesting. The writer knows details that few would know. The exact nature of the documents Khalid possessed, Blackwood's role, even the name of Mahmoud Effendi. This is not the work of someone seeking justice through proper channels. This is someone orchestrating a very particular outcome." "What do you mean?" Mercier asked. "I mean, monsieur, that someone wished you to come to Cairo. Someone wished to use you, your friendship with Khalid, your desire for justice, as a piece in a larger game. Tell me, did you follow me through the souk yesterday evening?" "No, I was nowhere near Khan el-Khalili yesterday." "Can you prove this?" I was at the French Institute until 6 o'clock, consulting their archives. The librarian can confirm this. Afterward, I returned here and dined early. Poirot studied the Frenchman's face with his penetrating gaze. Finally, he nodded slowly. I believe you, Monsieur Mercier. You are not our murderer, but I think you have been made the cat's paw in someone else's scheme. Someone who wanted Sir Edmund dead, who wanted the mystery of 1919 revived, who perhaps seeks not justice but vengeance, or something else entirely. But who? And why? That, Poirot said quietly, is what we must now discover. And to do so, we must pay another visit to Mahmoud Effendi. This time, however, we shall be rather more insistent. Chapter 7. The Manuscript Dealer's Secret. The afternoon sun blazed mercilessly over Cairo as Poirot, accompanied by Inspector Hassan, Rashid, and a reluctant Philippe Mercier, made their way through the winding passages of Khan el-Khalili. So the souk was less crowded than it had been the previous evening, the heat driving most sensible people to seek shade and cool drinks. They found Mahmoud Effendi's shop shuttered, a simple wooden sign hanging on the door proclaiming in Arabic that the establishment was closed. Poirot examined the lock with interest. Inspector, I believe we have sufficient cause to enter these premises, do we not? Hassan nodded grimly. The investigation of a murder provides ample justification. He called to a constable he had brought along, who produced a heavy iron bar, and with 2 sharp blows broke the lock. The shop was dark and silent, the air stale. Poirot lit a lamp and began to search methodically through the shelves and piles of manuscripts. Hassan and Rashid joined him, while Mercier stood near the entrance, his face troubled. Monsieur Poirot, Rashid called from behind the desk. Look at this. He held up several sheets of paper, covered in Arabic script with French translations scrawled in the margins. Poirot examined them carefully, his expression growing increasingly grave. These are letters, he murmured, written in 1919. Letters between French and British officials discussing the division of Arab territories after the war. And here, this is a copy of a secret agreement contradicting the promises made to Faisal and the Arab leaders. The documents Khalid possessed, Hassan asked. Copies of them, at the very least, which means Mahmoud Effendi was telling us the truth when he claimed to deal in manuscripts, but not the whole truth. He possessed documents that could destroy reputations, topple governments, to reshape our understanding of history. Mercier stepped forward, his eyes wide. These are the proofs I sought. This is the evidence that my friend Khalid died for. Indeed. But where is Mahmoud himself? Poirot continued his search, moving to a narrow door at the back of the shop. It led to a small storage room, lined with locked cabinets and trunks. It was Rashid who found the body. The young man's cry brought them all running. Mahmoud Effendi lay crumpled in the corner of the storage room, his neck bent at an unnatural angle, his eyes staring sightlessly at the ceiling. Near his outstretched hand lay a scattered pile of documents, as if he had been clutching them when he died. Hassan knelt beside the body, checking for signs of life, though it was clearly futile. His neck is broken, and he has been dead for some hours, perhaps since late last night. Poirot examined the scene with minute attention, disturbing nothing. There are no signs of a struggle. The documents he held, they have been partially burned. See here, the edges are charred, but someone interrupted the burning before it could be completed. He gathered the surviving papers carefully. Among them was a letter, written in English, dated just 2 days prior. It was addressed to no one, but its content was explosive. I can no longer remain silent. The documents in my possession prove conclusively that Sir Edmund Blackwood destroyed evidence of the British and French betrayal of Arab independence in 1919, directly leading to the murder of Khalid al-Rashid. I have sent copies to certain parties who will ensure the truth emerges. If anything should happen to me, I know that justice will still be served. He was preparing to expose everything, Hassan said quietly. Perhaps Sir Edmund discovered this and... No, Poirot interrupted firmly. Sir Edmund was already dead when this letter was written. See the date, 2 days ago. Sir Edmund died 3 nights ago. This letter was written the day after his death. Then who was he threatening? That, mon ami, is the essential question. Mahmoud knew the truth about 1919, possessed documents proving it, and claimed to have sent copies to certain parties. Someone killed him to prevent further disclosure, but too late, for he had already distributed the evidence. Mercier picked up one of the scorched documents, translating the Arabic carefully. This appears to be part of Khalid's original testimony, his account of approaching Blackwood with the documents, Juan Blackwood's promise to deliver them to the proper authorities. And here, his voice shook with emotion. Here is Khalid's final entry, written the day before his death. He expresses concern that he is being followed, that perhaps he has made a terrible mistake in trusting Blackwood. Poirot took the document, reading it with sorrowful attention. So, Khalid suspected at the end that he had been betrayed. How tragic that his suspicions proved correct. But how did Mahmoud obtain these documents? Rashid asked. If Blackwood destroyed the originals, where did these copies come from? An excellent question. Let us search more thoroughly. In one of the locked cabinets, opened by the constable's bar, they found a leather portfolio containing dozens of documents, photographs, and letters, all relating to the events of 1919. Untucked among them was a personal diary written in French. Poirot opened it to the first page. The handwriting was elegant, cultured, unmistakably European. The first entry was dated March 1919, Damascus. Listen to this, Poirot said and began to read aloud. Today I witnessed an act of cowardice that shames our entire diplomatic service. Young Blackwood, to whom the Arab Khalid al-Rashid brought evidence of our betrayal, has chosen expedience over honor. Rather than expose the truth, rather than risk his career and embarrass his superiors, he has destroyed the documents and assured Khalid that they will be properly handled. I know what this means. Khalid is a marked man. I cannot intervene directly without destroying my own position, but I have made copies of the most important documents. Someday, perhaps, when they will serve the cause of justice. The diary was signed with initials. C.D. Mercier gasped. C.D. Charles Devereux. He was the French liaison officer in Damascus in 1919. I knew him slightly. He died in 1932 in Beirut. And before his death, Poirot continued, turning pages, he entrusted these documents to someone. The diary continues for several years, recording his growing disillusionment with the mandates, his guilt over Khalid's death, his determination that the truth should someday emerge. And then, in 1932, just weeks before his death, one final entry. He read, I am dying. The doctors give me perhaps a month. I have decided that the documents must be preserved, must eventually be brought to light. I am sending them to a dealer I trust in Cairo, Mahmoud Effendi, a man of integrity who understands their value. I have instructed him to guard them carefully and to release them only when the time is right, when they can do the most good for the Arab cause. So Mahmoud has had these documents for over 2 years, Hassan said. Why did he not release them before now? Why wait? Perhaps, Poirot suggested, because he was waiting for the right moment. Or perhaps someone convinced him to wait. Or perhaps, he paused significantly, someone else learned of their existence and sought to control how and when they would be revealed. The anonymous letter that brought me to Cairo, Mercier said slowly. It was not sent by Mahmoud. It was sent by someone who knew he possessed the documents. Precisely. Someone who wished to set events in motion. Someone who orchestrated Sir Edmund's fear and desperation, who arranged the meeting in the Souk, or who perhaps even sent the threatening letters to Sir Edmund himself. But to what end? Rashid demanded. If the goal was simply to expose the truth about my grandfather's death, why not release the documents directly? Why this elaborate charade? Poirot's eyes gleamed with the light of understanding. Because, mon ami, the truth about 1919 was not the ultimate objective. It was merely the means to achieve something else, something that required Sir Edmund's death and Mahmoud's silence. He gathered the documents carefully, placing them back in the portfolio. Inspector Hassan, I believe it is time we examine Sir Edmund's villa once more. There is something there, something we missed in our first inspection, that will illuminate this entire mystery. What are we looking for? Evidence, Poirot replied. Of another betrayal, one that occurred not in 1919, but in the present day. Come, we must hurry. Time grows short, and our murderer has proven both clever and ruthless. We must act before someone else dies. As they emerged from the shop into the blazing sunlight, Poirot paused and looked back at the dark entrance. 2 men are dead, he murmured, both killed because of secrets from the past. But the killer's true motive lies not in vengeance for old wrongs, but in protecting something current, something valuable, something worth multiple murders to conceal. And I begin to see at last what that something might be. Chapter 8. The Truth Unveiled. The sun was setting over Cairo, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold, when Poirot assembled everyone in the drawing room of Sir Edmund Blackwood's villa. Inspector Hassan had arranged for all the relevant parties to be present: Rashid Gamal, Philippe Mercier, the servants Fatima and Safia, and one additional guest whose presence had been requested by Poirot himself, a British official from the Residency, a Mr. Gerald Thornton, who had served as Sir Edmund's colleague and friend for many years. Thornton was a man in his late 50s, distinguished-looking with silver hair and the bearing of a career diplomat. He sat stiffly in an armchair, his expression one of polite bewilderment. "Inspector Hassan," he said, "I came at your request, though I cannot imagine how I might assist. Sir Edmund's death was a tragedy, but surely the matter is closed. The evidence clearly indicated suicide." "On the contrary, Mr. Thornton," Poirot said quietly, "the matter is far from closed. But perhaps we should begin at the beginning." He stood before the fireplace, his hands clasped behind his back, every inch the master detective. 15 years ago, in Damascus, a young Arab nationalist named Khalid al-Rashid approached a British diplomat with explosive evidence, documents proving that Britain and France had made secret agreements betraying their promises of Arab independence. That diplomat was Sir Edmund Blackwood. Sir Edmund, ambitious and afraid, destroyed the documents and abandoned Khalid to his fate. 3 days later, Khalid was murdered. Rashid's face was rigid with controlled emotion, but he said nothing. For 15 years, Sir Edmund lived with his guilt. But the past, as they say, is never truly buried. Unknown to him, a French officer named Charles Devereux had made copies of the most damaging documents, and, so before his death in 1932, entrusted them to a manuscript dealer here in Cairo, Mahmoud Effendi. Poirot began to pace slowly, his eyes moving from face to face. 2 weeks ago, Sir Edmund began receiving threatening letters. These letters referenced the events of 1919 and demanded money, ostensibly as blackmail. Terrified, Sir Edmund reached out to me for help. But before I could arrive, he encountered someone in Khan el-Khalili who whispered Khalid's name and a cryptic phrase, "Shadows remember what men forget." 3 days later, Sir Edmund was found dead in this very room, apparently by his own hand. "But you don't believe it was suicide," Mercier said. "I do not. The evidence was too perfect, too convenient. A locked room, a pistol in the hand, no sign of struggle. And yet there were inconsistencies. Sir Edmund was right-handed, but the angle of the wound suggested a left-handed shooter. The absence of a suicide note from a man who lived by words, the disappearance of the threatening letters, and, most tellingly, the burned papers in the ashtray, papers that had been destroyed hastily, incompletely. Inspector Hassan leaned forward. "You're saying someone murdered him and arranged the scene to look like suicide?" "Precisely. Someone who had access to this house, who knew Sir Edmund's habits, who could enter and leave without arousing suspicion. Someone who knew about the locked study and how to manipulate that detail to their advantage." "But how could anyone murder someone in a locked room?" Thornton demanded. "Ah, but that is the cleverness of it. The room was not locked when the murder occurred. It was locked afterward, from the outside, using the key that Fatima, the maid, kept on her ring. A key that was easily borrowed for a few moments and then returned." He turned to Rashid. "You were the last person to see Sir Edmund alive that evening, were you not? You left the villa at what time?" 7 o'clock, monsieur," Rashid said quietly. "Sir Edmund dismissed me, said he wished to work alone." And the servants retired to their quarters at 8 o'clock, after bringing Sir Edmund his dinner. The villa was empty, save for Sir Edmund himself. An ideal time for a murderer to strike, to enter through the garden door, which was never locked until the household retired, to commit the murder, to arrange the scene, and to lock the door from outside using Fatima's key before slipping away into the night. But who? Hassan demanded. Who had the motive, the means, the opportunity? Poirot's gaze settled on Gerald Thornton. Tell me, Mr. Thornton, how long have you known about the documents that Mahmoud Effendi possessed? Thornton's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Come, monsieur, let us dispense with pretense. You were also in Damascus in 1919, were you not? A junior officer then, working under Sir Edmund? You knew what had happened with Khalid al-Rashid. Perhaps you even helped Sir Edmund destroy the original documents. That's absurd. Is it? I think not. I think you have lived these 15 years with the same guilt as Sir Edmund, but also with the same fear. Fear that the truth would destroy your career, your reputation, your comfortable life. And then, 2 months ago, you learned that Mahmoud Effendi possessed copies of those documents. How did you learn this? I wonder. Perhaps through your intelligence contacts? Perhaps through careless talk in the expatriate community? Thornton said nothing, but his hands gripped the arms of his chair. You realized that if these documents became public, you would be implicated alongside Sir Edmund. Your career would be ruined. Perhaps you would even face criminal charges for complicity in Khalid's death. And so you conceived a plan. An audacious, terrible plan. Poirot's voice grew harder, colder. First, you sent anonymous letters to Sir Edmund, letters designed to terrify him into a state of panic. Then you sent an anonymous letter to Philippe Mercier in Paris, bringing him to Cairo to investigate Khalid's death. You wanted witnesses, you wanted observers. What you wanted the whole affair to be stirred up publicly. Why would I do such a thing? Thornton protested weakly. Because, monsieur, you needed Sir Edmund dead, and you needed his death to appear as suicide, the suicide of a guilty man consumed by remorse. You needed it to appear that Sir Edmund, overwhelmed by his conscience and by the threats he was receiving, had taken his own life. And to make this believable, you needed to create a narrative, a story that everyone would accept. Hassan stood abruptly. You're accusing Mr. Thornton of murder. I am. 3 nights ago, Gerald Thornton came to this villa. He knew Sir Edmund would be alone, knew the servants would be in their quarters. He entered through the garden. Perhaps he had a key, perhaps the door was simply unlocked. He went to the study where Sir Edmund sat working, and he carried with him a pistol, Sir Edmund's own antique pistol, taken from the collection earlier, perhaps on a previous visit. Poirot demonstrated with gestures. Sir Edmund looked up, surprised but not alarmed. This was his friend and colleague after all. They spoke, perhaps argued, and then, in a moment when Sir Edmund was distracted, Thornton shot him. He arranged the body, placed the pistol in Sir Edmund's hand, burned the threatening letters in the ashtray to destroy evidence, and locked the door from the outside using Fatima's key, which he had taken from her kitchen earlier that evening and returned later. This is fantasy, Thornton cried, but there was desperation in his voice now. Is it? Then explain to me, monsieur, how you knew about the threatening letters when neither the police nor anyone else had mentioned them publicly, and you just spoke of them as if their existence were common knowledge, but it is not. Only the murderer would know of their existence and destruction. Thornton opened his mouth, then closed it again. And then, Poirot continued relentlessly, there is the matter of Mahmoud Effendi, the dealer who possessed the dangerous documents. He too had to die, not just to silence him, but to retrieve or destroy any documents that might still implicate you. You visited his shop 2 nights ago, did you not? You demanded the documents. Perhaps he refused. Perhaps he threatened to expose you. You killed him, broke his neck in a struggle, then attempted to burn the most damaging papers. But you were interrupted, perhaps by a sound from the street, perhaps by fear, and you fled, leaving the job incomplete. Hassan signaled to his constables, so who moved to stand behind Thornton's chair. In your jacket pocket, Mr. Thornton, Poirot said softly, I believe Inspector Hassan will find a gold signet ring, the ring that Abu Hassan, the antiquities dealer, saw on the hand of the man who followed Sir Edmund through the Souk, the ring that marks you as a member of a particular Oxford college, The ring you forgot you were wearing that afternoon when you went to Khan el-Khalili to threaten Sir Edmund personally, to ensure he was properly terrified. Hassan reached down and pulled Thornton's right hand from where he had been concealing it. There, gleaming in the lamplight, was the gold signet ring. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Thornton slumped forward, his face in his hands. "He was going to confess," he whispered. "Edmund sent for you, Poirot, or because he intended to confess everything. He was going to destroy both of us, throw away everything we'd built, everything we'd achieved, all for the sake of a dead Arab nationalist who'd been foolish enough to trust the wrong people." "And so you killed him," Poirot said quietly. "I had no choice. Don't you understand? It was 15 years ago. We were young, we made a mistake. Why should our entire lives be destroyed for one error in judgment?" "Because," Rashid said, his voice shaking with fury and grief, "that error in judgment cost my grandfather his life. Because your cowardice enabled a murder. Because justice matters, even 15 years later." Thornton looked up at him, and for a moment there was something like shame in his eyes. Then he turned away. Inspector Hassan gestured to his constables. "Gerald Thornton, I am arresting you for the murders of Sir Edmund Blackwood and Mahmoud Effendi. Take him away." As Thornton was led from the room, Poirot turned to Rashid and placed a gentle hand on the young man's shoulder. "Your grandfather was a man of honor who died seeking justice. Sir Edmund, in the end, tried to atone for his cowardice, though it cost him his life. And now, at last, the truth will be known. The documents that Mahmoud preserved will be released. History will record what truly happened in Damascus in 1919. Rashid's eyes were wet with tears. "Thank you, Monsieur Poirot. Thank you for giving my grandfather's memory the justice it deserved." Philippe Mercier stepped forward, extending his hand to Poirot. "And thank you for finding the truth about my friend Khalid. I only wish I could have helped him when he lived." "We cannot change the past, gentlemen," Poirot said gently. "We can only ensure that its lessons are remembered and that justice, however delayed, is finally served." As the moon rose over Cairo, Poirot stood on the terrace of Shepheard's Hotel, gazing out over the ancient city. The minaret stood silhouetted against the night sky, and from somewhere in the distance came the haunting call of a muezzin. Inspector Hassan joined him, offering a glass of arak. "A remarkable piece of detective work, Monsieur Poirot. But tell me, when did you first suspect Thornton?" Poirot sipped his drink thoughtfully. "From the beginning, there were certain things that troubled me. The locked room suggested careful planning. The burned letters suggested someone who knew they existed. The murder of Mahmoud so soon after Sir Edmund's death suggested someone desperate to control the release of information. And then there was the signet ring that Abu Hassan mentioned, a detail that seemed insignificant until I learned that Thornton had attended the same Oxford college whose ring matched that description. But the final proof? The final proof came when Thornton betrayed knowledge he should not have possessed. A murderer's tongue is often his worst enemy, mon ami. The little grey cells, they notice these things." Hassan smiled. "Cairo is in your debt, Monsieur Poirot?" "Not at all. I simply did what I do. I sought order in chaos, truth in deception, justice in the shadows. Though I must say," he added, stroking his magnificent moustache, "this case has reminded me that the past is never truly past, and the shadows in the Souk remember everything, and eventually all secrets come to light." Far below, in the winding alleys of Khan el-Khalili, the merchants were closing their stalls for the night. The ancient marketplace, which had witnessed centuries of secrets, bargains, and betrayals, would rest until dawn. But the shadows remained, patient and watchful, remembering everything. And Hercule Poirot, the little Belgian detective with the egg-shaped head and the magnificent moustache, allowed himself a small smile of satisfaction. Once again, order had been restored, justice had been served, and the truth had emerged from darkness into light. The case of the shadows in the Souk was closed.